another firm that has been for several years, number of years, 6 years at least or more, been on the same journey. Bill Anderson is the CEO of Roche Pharmaceuticals, and that is about half of the firm Roche. They also have Roche Diagnostics, about the same size, around 50,000 employees, so a total of over 100,000. It was founded much more recently than Ericsson in 1896, and it's very successful and worth a great deal in the stock market. And these are excerpts from a talk that was hosted by Michael Lurie at the Lisbon Agility Conference, and I'll give you the link later to the whole interview. But these were highlights, and he starts out by describing the internal and external drivers of change.
Especially if you take a company that's used to doing things the more traditional way, and you're trying to change that. That's very unsettling. But we had some major business challenges. We were going from a period where we had 50% of our revenue coming from 3 big products, and those 3 products were going to go away due to loss of patents and things, and we were going to need to replace them, not with 3 products, but with 15 or 20 medicines. And so on the one hand, we had kind of a big expansion in terms of the complexity and the requirements from the external environment, but at the same time, we needed to be in a much leaner manner and just to be much quicker to respond, because the dynamics of the market's changing and things. And so we realized that the old setup we had just wasn't going to get us there, and that was kind of the external challenge. At the same time, I was incoming CEO of Genentech, which is the U.S. division of Roche Pharmaceuticals, and I was making the rounds and talking to people. I had been with the company for a decade at that point, but I had been in another division. I was coming back as the CEO of Genentech, and so I thought, I need to find out what's going on, what's on people's minds. And I talked to people, and what I heard from people, whether they were frontline workers or senior executives or anywhere in between, was a very similar themes. People, they love the medicines we make and the benefits for patients. They love the cool science, the supportive culture. That was all great. But they always then said, but I can't get anything done. Can you fix that? And I was like, oh, that's a problem. Can't get anything done. Yeah. Wow. Now, if I had been new to the company, I would have thought, oh, if they can't get things done, sounds like there's too much bureaucracy. We'll get some little teams, and we'll figure out how to simplify processes and break bureaucracy, and we'll fix this. But here's the problem. For the decade before that, we had been doing almost nothing but breaking bureaucracy. And so it was sort of like, we're putting all our energy into simplify processes, break bureaucracy, and we're actually going backwards. It's not working. And that led to really this profound realization that as sincere and earnest as the leaders were about making, simplifying things, making it easier for people to get things done, empowering people, that we were losing. And if you're consistently losing at a game, then at some point you have to decide, we got to play a different game. And that's how we decided, well, we've really got to chuck the old rule book, and we've got to go for some really radically different solutions. And frankly, everything's on the table. There's nothing sacred.
So people asked Bill Anderson at the time, how long is this going to take? When's it going to end? And he had some very clear answers.
So in terms of being emergent, so you don't know where the destination is, what it looks like, how to get there. You're just setting off on a journey to get somewhere better than that. And so then there's the inevitable questions. Well, people want to know, well, what does this new way look like? Don't know, but it's going to be great. People are going to have more individual autonomy and authority, but it's going to feature discipline. It can't be chaos. You know, there has to be a discipline and a mutual understanding, but there's going to be more, you know, individual choice and empowerment. Okay. How do we get there? We don't know, but it's going to be different than what we've done before. Oh, okay. How long is it going to take? I mean, is this like a 6-month program or is it longer? And it's like, longer. How long? Don't have no idea. How can you know how long something's going to take? And believe me, by the way, in a traditional system, that's almost the most painful thing, because whenever there's a difficult sort of change process, the first thing people want to know is like, okay, well, how bad is it going to be and how long is it going to take? But especially how long is it going to take? Because like we just got to weather the storm. And I just want to know, is this like 6 months and then we can get back to normal? And so, yeah, we had to tell people that like we have no idea. Now we've stopped saying that. We're now saying, hey, we can see the destination, and we know that because we got people that are there. We have countries, we have functions. They are doing this. They're living it. They're empowered. They've got dramatically better productivity, but the personal sense of fulfillment in work is amazing. So now we're saying, hey, here's the path. Here's the elements that I described, those 4 elements, and it takes practice. You got to implement and practice, and you get there. And so that's the path. And you know, we can say, yeah, from the time you start to implement those 4 things in earnest, you know, you're making progress within 6 months, and within 12 to 18 months, people are feeling it. I mean, it's good. You're achieving results, and you're no longer in a, you know, kind of massive change program. You're practicing a new discipline and living a new way of working.
Bill's a kind of funny guy, and we sometimes think, well, managers are really boring kinds of people, but he's very lively and well worth listening to. He does make clear that this means more than thinking it through. This comes from the gut. This change really is your whole person is involved in this.
There's no amount of these sort of training courses and things that can create the motivation. They can help point the way, but there has to be something that happens in the gut. I mean, this is not the easy course. I mean, this has been 6 years of a lot of disruption, a lot of type 2 thinking. You know, all the meetings became much more challenging. You know, in the old way, for example, I described, you have these meetings, like we all know, oh, this is the meeting, this is the 2-day meeting where we review and endorse the long-range revenue forecast, you know, just like we did the last 5 years. That it's, you know, okay, yeah, you have to debate things, you have to look at a lot of numbers, but frankly, once you've done that a few times, it's pretty easy. Now we're saying, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to do that exercise. We're going to do in an hour instead of 2 days. And we're going to take the 16 hours we gain back, and we're going to fix this or that process and figure out, why do we need so many managers to get such and such done, instead of it being from the highest level up and flowing down. It did kind of emerge in a few places, and then
one of the things he got inspiration from was from a restaurant. So let's hear what he discovered in a restaurant.
There's a hotel I've stayed in a number of times, and over the years. And at a point, I noticed that, you know, this was a hotel. It was a very nice hotel, a lovely hotel, and beautiful old building, and wonderful location. But you know, the food, the service was just okay. And then I noticed after a few years of visiting there, you know, with some regularity, that wow, all of a sudden the food, the service, everything was amazing. It was excellent. And the really key thing that I noticed was, but the personnel was the same. You know, it was the same waiters and people at the front desk, and right. And so I said, you know, I got to find out who's running this place, because I have a feeling. And so I asked to meet the general manager, and I got to know her. And sure enough, she started about 2 months before I noticed the change, and boom, and so I asked her, and she said, yeah, well, we have a real focus now of, we want every guest, we want them to have a special memory. And we want our staff to be really creative in thinking about what that special memory could be. Could it be the memory they have when they first walked in the door? Could it be the memory they had when they got that first taste of food, or whatever it was? And it's almost like a competition. Everyone has to figure out, like, what could be the most special memory. And so that was a vision. That's a vision. I love that, because it's not just something you put on your website, but it catalyzes action. It captivates the imagination of people, and it drives them to do something that's great.
Or a restaurant of 30 people is one thing. It's another thing with a 55,000 person organization with complex new pharmaceuticals. So let's hear how he translated that restaurant experience into a 55,000 person pharmaceutical company.
So we said, what could be a vision for our company that would be that kind of vision? And again, we had a group that was very mature and people who had been with the company for some time. So that's not as easy when you've been there. You kind of tried a lot of that stuff. You've had slogans and you've had campaigns, and right. But we basically kind of locked ourselves in a room for a day, and we sort of brainstormed on this. And where we ended up was, first we said, we want to deliver. We don't want to deliver 20% more medicines or something. To make this worth our time and everybody else that works here, to make it worth it, we want to deliver 3 to 5 times more benefit to patients over the next decade than we did in the past decade. And we said we're going to do that by delivering twice as many medicines, and we want to make, on average, each of those medicines has about twice as big of value in terms of what it does. Okay, so 2 times 2 is 4. We said 3 to 5. It's not that precise. Okay, 3 to 5 times the patient benefit. And the reason we chose that was, we said, man, that is. We said, is that impossible? And we did all the math, and we basically figured out it's almost impossible that we could do that, but it's not totally impossible. It's just almost impossible. And we said, yeah, that sounds like what we want to do. It needs to be that hard, that it's going to take everything we have and going to stretch us beyond what we could think would be reasonable. Okay. And so we went home that night and we thought, oh, this is great. This is great. And we came in the next morning and somebody said, I just don't feel that good about this vision. And we're like, oh man, why? And he said, well, healthcare systems around the world are struggling to pay the bills, to make the budgets work. And don't we need to do something? I mean, it's great we want to do that for patients, but what are we doing for society beyond the help we give for patients? And we said, we ought to be doing something about that too. So we decided we're gonna aspire to deliver 3 to 5 times the patient benefit at half the cost to society. And we can do that by having more medicines and having lower prices. We can do that by delivering bigger benefits. We can do that by going for curative therapies instead of just ones that sort of treat the disease. However we going to do it, we can do it by having lower environmental impacts. Okay, but that's how we came to this vision. And it's super important because everybody in our enterprise every day ought to be able to see how the thing they're doing is going to help us achieve that goal. And basically we tell people, hey, if the thing you're doing, if you can't see how it's delivering on that, then stop doing it. Talk to somebody, talk to a colleague, like, hey, because that's the thing we're here to do. And anything we're doing that doesn't drive that, we stop. And by the way, we got rid of tons of work, and we're still getting rid of work. But things like we realized we're spending huge amounts of time doing things like forecasts. And we said, wow, are all those forecasts, are they delivering 3 to 5 times the patient benefit at half the cost of society? No. Boom, we're done. We're doing all kinds of monthly things in finance, monthly, but we're reporting results quarterly. Why do we need to do all those things monthly? It triggers a huge amount of work. And these are just a couple examples, but there's tons of things like that.
So Roche had the advantage that it was already focused on the customer, the patients. It already had a culture that was very collaborative, but it couldn't get anything done, and that was a huge problem. In fact, the collaborative culture was almost a burden because people were too nice. People were, because they were so collaborative, well, that's Joe, that's Frank, that's Bill. They're just like that. We have to live with that. But having a mission where you're asking, are we achieving this mission was very different. Microsoft, they had more burdens because the focus was not on the customer in 2008, and the culture was very confrontational, as we talked about last week. That period, 2008 to 2014, was very formative for what happened to Microsoft, because in those early years, when you read Nadella's book, which I like, Miriam, I would strongly recommend that you read it. He says that in 2008, he knew nothing about why Microsoft was so slow. At that point, they were on 3-year cycles, and he started asking around what's going on, and people laughed at him and said, you are not even square one. You haven't heard about Agile. You don't have Agile teams. Microsoft is dead with 3-year cycles. You might as well just go to the funeral service now. And this team, the team leaders, not the mid-level managers or the senior managers, the team leader started to say, look, I've just had a product that's gone to market, and it's already something on the market that was there 3 years ago. If we continue like that, we are dead meat. So started exploring with 1 team, and then 3 teams, and then got permission to do it in 25 teams, and then 300 teams by 2011. All of that work was laying the foundation of what was to come. That was the basis for the subsequent takeoff. And so when you look at all of those steps in 2008 to 2014, that's what enabled Nadella to give the kind of 90-second speech that I'm about to show you, which illustrates that his commitment, by this time, he'd learned how this worked. He'd learned what a different organization had to be. He was convinced that he had to play the role in driving it. And he was not someone who was delegating that. It couldn't be delegated. This was a role that he was actually making happen. So let's hear his 90 seconds of, this was a speech that he gave a couple of days after he became CEO. And he was able to give that speech because of the 6 years that Microsoft had put in to build an army of Agilists before he gave that speech.
I would say first thing I want to do and focus on is ruthlessly remove any obstacles that allow us to innovate, every individual in an organization to innovate, and then focus all of that innovation on things that Microsoft can uniquely do. We are the company that enables people to do more, to play, get more, have more fun, to create more. So in some sense, we refer to ourselves as the do more company. And I want us to be able to take that focus and innovation forward. And lastly, I want every one of us to find more meaning at work. We spend far too much time at work for it not to have deep meaning. Going forward, it's a mobile first, cloud first world. In other words, everything is becoming digital and software driven. And so I think of the opportunities being unbounded, and we need to be able to pick the unique contribution that we want to bring.
So it's the 6 years before that enabled him to give those sort of 90-minute talks explaining his role and what Microsoft was going to become. And so a couple of $1 trillion later, you see the impact of doing that.